Tell us first up, just your sense of how many people across this economy may have lost jobs, probably largely casual labourers at this stage, but enormous numbers, I get the sense, even in just the last 10 days.
Yeah, look, I think the pace of that, Chris, has picked up this week following the announcements on Friday from government and others, and sort of the rise of the impact of the virus more generally, and the decline in activity that's corresponded with that. So, like you mentioned earlier, streets are much quieter, cafes are much quieter, restaurants are quieter, hotels are quieter, events are being cancelled. So people in those sort of areas are being impacted first. So you're looking, I think, in the tens of thousands. And look, to be quite honest, Chris, I think we have to say that we won't see official data on this until June, early June. But you've got to think that just right at this moment, the economy is contracting because of that lack of activity. Some parts are doing well, obviously, economically. Retail is one for another. Those who produce pharmaceuticals, hand sanitising products and the like, they're obviously doing well. Cleaning companies are doing well, can't keep up with demand. But a lot of businesses are doing it tough. We've got a lot of working from home. A lot of businesses are now looking at sort of further steps to reduce their exposure. And the initial sort of focus from the companies I talk to is, look, we're just trying to get through the next month to 6 weeks, and then we'll reassess after that. So it's a step-by-step process. The best advice I've heard is, you've heard the government sort of say 6 months. I've heard other medical experts say this could last for up to a year. We just don't know, and that's part of the issue that business faces. It just doesn't know how long this will go and how deep it will go. So it's very much an unknown, unlike anything businesses had to deal with before.
There is no doubt this is unprecedented, and that's a word that's thrown around too often, but this crisis is unquestionably something new. Now, we know about the medical challenge being new. When you talk about business and the economy, this throws up a whole set of new challenges for policymakers and for business. You and I are both old enough to have been around during the last recession 30 years ago. That unfolded very slowly. Sure, it was incredibly tough for a lot of people. A lot of people were unemployed for long periods of time, but it unfolded so slowly. The rapidity at which businesses will go bust here and people will lose work is going to be an absolute jolt, not just to the economy, but to society.
Oh, look, absolutely. And I think we're going to see change happen very quickly over the next couple of weeks. And I think you started out the show by talking about trying to keep things in perspective and balance. And I think that's what we're all trying to do here. This is going to be tough, and it has to be managed as well as possible, but there is a danger with all sort of the loose talk that's around and the rumour mongering and the like, text messages flying everywhere, that we're going to talk ourselves into more than a recession if we're not careful. So that's why and the important thing here is to keep the economy going, and that's what business is saying to government. That's what government is acting on. They've had one very good first go at a stimulus package. There's a second one coming. A lot of that focus has got to be around business, particularly smaller and medium-sized businesses and sole traders who are doing it very, very, very tough at the moment and are basically just trying to hang on. So it's a matter of trying to find relief measures for them. But you're going to see a lot of people, really unfortunately, out of work or with much reduced hours in the coming weeks, and that will have a significant economic impact. It will work its way through. It'll work its way through in terms of spending and economic activity more generally, and that will, I fear, will lead to it feeding on itself and sort of more reduced activity. That's why stimulus that the government is talking about is so important. I'll just give you one example, Chris. I was talking to a member today. They do a lot of the supplying to airlines for food, catering and the like. Their business is going to get absolutely smashed now because the airlines are essentially shutting up shop. So there could be knock-on effects right through the economy from that, and they're the sort of knock-ons that we're going to start to see in the coming weeks.
I couldn't agree more. We don't want to talk this down, but I think we need to talk about how tough it's going to be so that people don't get shocked as it unfolds, but also on the bright side of this, you say we don't know how long, 6 months, 3 months, a year, sure, but we do know that we'll get out of this and return to a normal economy. So we all ought to focus, whether it's government, industry or just the public, we need to focus on trying to help businesses through. People who keep a job, but might be by keeping to spend your money in your local community, and with businesses will be desperately trying to hang on to their workforce. And on that, you're making a very strong argument that now would be a bad time for the Fair Work Commission to come out and lift the minimum wage.
Well, look, you don't want to get into the situation where businesses are having extra costs imposed on them, either financially or in a regulatory sense. And we need to be very, very aware of that and be wary of that. And that is why we've suggested that the minimum wage case, which is normally held from about now, going through the next couple of months with a decision in July, be held back until we know exactly the impact of what we're seeing here. Otherwise, it's just a stab in the dark that the Commission would take. And you know, there's a whole range of ideas around maybe deferral until later in the year, or no rise in the first part and phasing something in later, or just waiting and seeing what the data is. Extra costs on business, because those wage rises are really the last thing businesses can absorb at the moment, and that will more than ever lead to job shedding, and that's what we need to avoid. So we just say to the Commission, you know, take some evidence, and wait for the data and hold back, and then start to make some decisions, but be very, very cognizant of the economy as a whole. I think there's some sympathy for that view out there, and I think that would be the right course to take, and it would benefit the economy as a whole, employers and employees in the long run, and that's what we're about.
I think we're about trying to... It makes sense. You want to try and keep as many people in work as possible. We want to make sure that executives and directors keep a lid on their own payments at the same time. I think Alan Joyce at Qantas has led the way on that.
Yeah, I think, and everyone is very aware of that, and is very aware of what's happening now through payments drying up, activity drying up, and so the economy as we knew it as little ago as 2 weeks ago is a memory. We're now in a new paradigm. The positive thing I've got to say, that coming out of what was happening in China was some very clear indications of reshoring or onshoring happening among businesses as they were bringing supply chains back to Australia. And if we can keep that momentum going over the period ahead, we could emerge from this, whenever we do emerge, 3, 6, 12 months from now, with a very different and an even stronger economy domestically, and that would be a very positive thing. That's what we need to work towards setting ourselves up for. Yeah,
fascinating insight. That a bit of import to replacement going on in the economy. Thanks for joining us, Dennis.